What if you discovered you'd won millions, but instead of sharing your secret, you decided to test your family's loyalty by pretending you were broke? In a journey filled with heartbreak, surprising generosity, and hard truths, one woman learns that true family isn't about blood or money. It's about who stands by you when you have nothing left to give. The morning sunlight crept through the thin curtains of my small apartment, casting long shadows across the scattered papers on my kitchen table. I sat there, staring at the glowing screen of my laptop, trying to make sense of the mess in front of me. My bank balance blinked back, a number far too low for comfort, and the growing stack of unopened bills threatened to overwhelm my thoughts. The job market was brutal, especially for someone like me with specialized skills but no guarantees. I had spent months searching for a stable accounting position, but nothing was solid yet. The interviews I had lined up were hopeful but uncertain. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, feeling the familiar sting of anxiety creep in. The emergency fund I had painstakingly built over the years was almost gone, drained by recent medical tests that had left me scared but still hopeful. I kept telling myself it was just precautionary, but the fear lingered in the back of my mind. How had I ended up here? I thought about the sacrifices I'd made. Every extra dollar I earned had gone to help someone else in the family over the years, repairing my sister's leaky roof, covering my cousin's rent during tough times, even helping out my mother with her bills. I was the go-to person, the one who never said no, who always stretched to make sure others were okay. But when I looked around now, the support I had once freely given was nowhere to be found. And that was the moment the idea formed, stubborn and sharp in my mind. What if this was a test? A way to see who cared, without the distractions of money or favors. I pulled out a notebook and began writing, outlining a plan that felt equal parts desperate and necessary. I would reach out to every family member individually, tell them the same story. The company I worked for suddenly closed, I was out of a job, my savings depleted by medical expenses, and I needed help. $5,000 to cover rent and bills until I could find something new. I knew it was manipulative, but I told myself it was also honest. I needed to know who would step up, not because I had money or could help them, but because they cared. I made a mental list of everyone and how I expected them to respond. Mom. Diane, probably sympathetic but hesitant, maybe offer less than I needed. Dad. Gregory, likely a lecture on financial responsibility, with a small or no contribution. Lisa. Sister would say the kids' expenses prevented her from helping. Jason. Brother expected outright refusal or silence. Warren and Stephanie, step-parents, almost certainly no help. Aunt Heather. Judgmental, blaming me for poor choices. Cousin Ryan. Would promise to help but never follow through. Aunt Martha. The only one I truly hoped would help. Generous despite limited means. I swallowed hard and accepted that I had to keep expectations low. My fingers trembled as I dialed Mom's number. Diane had always been the nurturing type, or at least she liked to think so. She was proud of the sacrifices she made raising me and my siblings, often reminding me how she gave up her dreams for our sake. If anyone would help, I thought it would be her. The phone rang 3 times before she answered, her voice distracted. Hello. Hi, Mom. It's me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady but strained. Cassie. Are you okay? You sound upset. I launched into the story I had rehearsed, describing the company's sudden closure, the lost wages, and the medical bills that had drained my emergency fund. I kept the details vague enough to raise concern but not questions. Oh, honey, that's terrible, she said softly. Have you applied for unemployment? What about your savings? I explained that unemployment wouldn't help for weeks and that my savings were gone. Then I asked, voice barely above a whisper. I hate to ask, but I need help, about $5,000 to cover rent and bills. I promise I'll pay you back. There was a pause. Cassie, Warren, and I just put a down payment on the lake house. We're pretty cash poor right now. Her voice shifted, almost defensive. Have you asked your father or Lisa? Paul makes good money at the hospital. I hesitated. I didn't want to ask Dad. And Lisa had the kids' tuition to worry about. Okay, let me talk to Warren and see what we can do, she said finally. But I can't promise anything. You know how tight he is. I nodded, though she couldn't see it. Thanks, Mom. Please let me know soon. Rent's due next week. After hanging up, I scribbled notes in my journal. Mom sounded concerned but immediately shifted responsibility. I suspected their conversation would end with no help coming my way. The next day, I met Dad at a busy cafe. I chose a public place, hoping it would keep things civil. You look tired, he greeted me, eyes scanning my face. I gave a weak smile and told him the story. He listened silently, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he sighed and began the lecture I expected. Cassie, I've always told you to keep 6 months' expenses saved. What happened to that plan? Life happened, Dad. Medical bills, car repairs. Not everyone can save that much. He shook his head. And now you expect others to bail you out. What about your spending? That apartment, cable subscriptions, streaming services. For 20 minutes, he went on about financial responsibility and the importance of living below your means. When I asked for help, he shook his head. Stephanie and I are focusing on our retirement. We can't risk dipping into those funds. This will be a good lesson. Sometimes we need to hit rock bottom. His words stung, but I nodded, fighting tears. I drove to Lisa's suburban home on Saturday afternoon. Her husband, Paul, was golfing, giving us privacy. Her house was immaculate. Modern furniture, professional family photos, the perfect image of success. Oh my God, Cassie, that's awful, she said, embracing me warmly. I can't believe the company closed like that. I felt a flicker of hope as I told her I needed $5,000. Lisa hesitated. We just bought a new Audi and tuition was due. Plus, we're remodeling the master bathroom. Paul handles the finances, and he's strict about the budget. She offered me a guest room temporarily, but I explained that moving was difficult with my job search in the city. She promised to call after talking to Paul, but avoided eye contact. I knew what that meant. Jason was next. I sent him a detailed text, but all I got was, "That sucks, sis. Tight right now." He never called back. My follow-up texts went unanswered. Stephanie was blunt. Warren and I can't help. Maybe this is a lesson in financial management. Warren told me plainly, "You're not my daughter. Your problems are yours." Ryan promised lunch and help, then ghosted me. Aunt Heather lectured me about poor choices and how others overcame struggles without begging. After a week of silence and excuses, my phone rang. It was Aunt Martha. "Cassie, honey, I heard from your mother about the job. Are you okay?" Her voice was warm, full of genuine concern. "I'm hanging in there," I admitted, emotion breaking through. "Let's meet for lunch tomorrow." My treat. At a cozy diner near her apartment, Martha looked just as I remembered. Silver hair in a simple ponytail, jeans, and a cardigan. She hugged me tightly before we sat. "I'm so sorry about your job. That company never deserved you." We talked about my job search. She offered to reach out to former colleagues. Then she surprised me, pulling out an envelope with $3,000. "It's not everything you need, but it should help with rent." I protested, but she insisted. "If you need a place to stay, my sofa pulls out. It's not fancy, but it's yours." Tears filled my eyes. Her generosity was overwhelming. Driving home clutching the envelope, I felt the weight of the contrast. Martha had almost no savings and health issues, but she gave me everything she could. Mom, who had just spent thousands on renovations, couldn't spare a dime. I learned a harsh truth about family that day. The morning sun filtered softly through the blinds as I sat on my worn couch, clutching the envelope Aunt Martha had given me the day before. $3,000. More than I expected. More than I dared hope for. And yet, as grateful as I was, an unsettling swirl of emotions churned inside me. Relief, yes. Gratitude. But also confusion, guilt, and sorrow. How had it come to this? I thought about Martha's life. A single public school teacher, living modestly on a fixed income, quietly struggling with diabetes. I'd learned her medication costs had risen recently, forcing her to pick up extra tutoring jobs just to make ends meet. And still, she had given me nearly everything she had, without hesitation or condition. My phone buzzed quietly. Text from Lisa. Heard about Aunt Heather spreading stories. Not sure what to say. Another from Mom. Have you spoken to Warren? Things are tight here. I ignored them, overwhelmed. The stark difference between Martha's generosity and the rest of the family's excuses weighed heavily. That week became a blur of quiet despair and sharp realizations. I reached out to each family member, one by one, recounting the same story of lost job, depleted savings, and urgent need. The responses confirmed my worst fears. Mom's initial sympathy had cooled. Her texts became curt, almost accusatory. You should have been more responsible. Warren and I can't keep bailing you out. Maybe this is a sign you should reconsider your career. I fought back tears each time I read her messages. The woman who had once comforted me now sounded distant, even cold. Dad's calls were worse than words on a screen. His tone was patronizing, almost scolding. You never learned to budget, did you? He said once. Why do you expect us to clean up your mess? Another time. I tried to explain the medical bills, the unexpected expenses. He only shook his head, lecturing me about financial planning as if I were a child. Lisa's initial sympathy had been genuine, but the more I pressed for help, the more she recoiled. I wish I could help more, she said finally, but Paul's finances are tight. She offered to let me stay temporarily, but I declined, unwilling to disrupt her family's life. My brother Jason was the cruelest surprise. After a brief, dismissive text, he disappeared from my life. Calls went unanswered. Messages ignored. The brother who had borrowed thousands from me over the years, promising to repay, was now unreachable. Stephanie's voice when I called was sharp and unforgiving. This is a lesson in financial responsibility, she said bluntly. Warren was even harsher. You're not my daughter, he said flatly. Your problems are yours. The words stung deeper than I expected. Cousin Ryan had initially sounded hopeful. Let's meet for lunch. I'll help. But he never showed. Excuses piled up until he vanished entirely. Heather's harsh words cut like a knife. You should have taken the bank job, she sneered. Stop blaming others for your mistakes. She spread rumors about my financial irresponsibility, painting me as the family's black sheep. Each rejection, excuse, and judgment chipped away at my heart. I had spent years giving without hesitation, only to find no safety net when I needed one. But Martha's kindness was a beacon in the darkness. One evening Martha and I sat quietly in my apartment. She held my hand, her eyes filled with understanding. People show you who they are when giving becomes inconvenient, she said softly. I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. It's a painful lesson, but an important one. I took a deep breath. It was time. Martha, I said, I haven't been completely honest. She looked at me, waiting. I didn't lose my job. The company is fine. I still work there. Her brow furrowed in confusion. I made up the story to see who would help me if I needed it. Silence settled between us. Are you angry? I asked, afraid of losing the one genuine relationship I'd found. No, she said after a moment. Sad maybe. Sad that you felt you needed to test people. She squeezed my hand gently. But I understand. Martha shared a story of her own, a painful memory of trust broken by her ex-husband Robert, who had stolen her inheritance by forging her signature. I learned some people see you as a resource, not a person, she said quietly. Her words resonated deeply. The next day I met with Philip, my financial advisor. I want to set up a trust for Martha, I told him. Something that covers her medical expenses and ensures a comfortable retirement. Philip nodded thoughtfully. We can structure it as a family trust, providing a monthly stipend without overwhelming her with a lump sum. Smiled. Perfect. I shared my plans with Philip. I'm giving notice at my job, I said. I want to start a non-profit to help elderly people living alone, people like Martha. Philip raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious. I want to make a difference, I said firmly. Later I called Charlotte, my closest friend. I told her everything, the lottery win, the experiment, the heartbreak. After her initial shock, she laughed. So what now? Coupon clipping millionaire. No Bentleys, I replied. But I want this money to mean something. Charlotte agreed. Start with Martha. I decided to call a family meeting. I didn't reveal the lottery win, at least not yet. But I needed to confront the past, clear the air and set boundaries. Invitations went out. Sunday arrived. Everyone showed up. Mom and Warren, Dad and Stephanie, Lisa and Paul, Jason, Aunt Heather and finally Martha. The room was thick with tension. I stood and began. I know there have been rumors, I said. But I'm fine. I have a new job. Relief washed over some faces. Why the drama? Dad asked, suspicious. I met his gaze. Because I reached out when I needed help. That's what family is for. I called out Jason's silence. You didn't return my calls, I said. But you asked me for $3,000 last Christmas. Embarrassed, he admitted he was struggling. The meeting was tense. Excuses were made, blame shifted. No apologies. But I felt stronger, heard, respected. After everyone left, Martha helped me clean up. You did well, she said. It wasn't easy, I admitted. But it was necessary. With newfound clarity, I planned for a future free from pretenses and toxic ties. Martha and I would face it together. The day after the family meeting was calm, almost surreal in its quiet. I woke slowly, the sunlight warm on my face, the house unusually still except for the faint hum of the city beyond my window. The tension from yesterday's confrontation lingered in the air like a storm that had passed but left the ground damp and heavy. Martha was already awake, sipping her morning tea in the kitchen. Her presence was a comforting balm, a reminder that some connections were genuine, unshaken by money or disappointment. I sat down across from her, the weight of my secret pressing against my chest. The lottery winnings, the experiment, it was all still fresh, a fragile truth that could shatter the delicate peace I'd found. Martha, I began, voice low, I want to be honest with you about everything. She looked up, attentive. I won the lottery 3 weeks ago. $47 million. Her eyes widened, but she said nothing at first. Just let the words settle between us. It changes everything, I admitted. And yet it doesn't. The money is secure, and I have financial advisors helping me manage it. She nodded slowly, absorbing the news. But I don't know what to do with the family. With all of them. Martha reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. Her eyes were steady, filled with the quiet strength I had always admired. You know, Cassie, she said softly, you don't owe anyone anything. Not even me. I shook my head, emotion swelling. But I want to help you, I insisted. Medical bills, a better apartment, anything you need. She smiled gently, a soft glow of pride in her eyes. My apartment is small, but it's full of things I love. My car runs most days. I have my students, my books. And now this wonderful secret with my favorite niece. She patted my hand and I felt tears rise, not from sadness this time but from gratitude. As days passed, the contrast between Martha's selflessness and the rest of my family's coldness became even clearer. Rumors about my supposed financial troubles continued to spread. Texts and messages arrived, laced with judgment and suspicion. Mom's voice in my head echoed. Feels like you're playing us against each other. Dad's words. Irresponsible behavior. Lisa's whispers of disapproval. The family had turned my vulnerability into ammunition, painting me as a failure rather than offering support. One morning I sat down with Philip, my trusted financial advisor. Together we crafted a plan to secure Martha's future. A family trust to cover her medical needs, provide a comfortable retirement, and grant her dignity without overwhelming responsibility. We also discussed my future. I want to leave my accounting job, I told Philip. I need to find purpose beyond numbers and budgets. His eyes sparkled with encouragement. Why not start a non-profit? Help others who are alone, struggling like Martha. The idea ignited a fire in me. This money wasn't just fortune. It was a chance for real change. That evening I called Charlotte, my closest confidant. I told her everything, the lottery win, the family test, the heartbreak, and the hope. Her laughter was warm and genuine. So, what's next? Coupon clipping millionaire or philanthropic visionary? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Neither. But I want this money to do good. Starting with Martha. Charlotte's support was unwavering. I scheduled a family meeting to confront the past and set new boundaries, though I planned to keep the lottery a secret for now. Sunday came, and one by one, family members arrived. Some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled skepticism. Mom and Warren, Dad and Stephanie, Lisa and Paul, even Jason, who had been avoiding me for weeks. Aunt Heather showed up with her usual disapproving glare. Martha came last, her gentle smile a quiet anchor. I stood before them, calm and composed. Thank you all for coming, I began. I want to clear the air about recent rumors. Faces shifted. Some relaxed, others stiffened. I'm fine. I have a new job, better pay and benefits. The financial troubles were real but temporary. Relief was palpable. Mom sighed, visibly relaxing. I addressed the elephant in the room, the lack of support when I had asked for help. Jason looked away, embarrassed. You didn't answer my calls when I needed you, I said gently. But you asked me for money last Christmas. He admitted he had been struggling but apologized for his silence. The conversation was tense. Excuses flew, blame shifted. No one took responsibility, but I felt stronger. I wasn't the desperate girl begging for help anymore. I was someone who had learned her worth. After everyone left, Martha and I cleaned up together. You did well, she said quietly. It wasn't easy, I replied. But necessary. Life had transformed in ways I never imagined. I moved into a modest home with a garden that bloomed every spring. Martha had her own cozy house nearby, designed for her comfort and health. My non-profit thrived, helping hundreds of elderly people living alone. Charlotte joined as outreach coordinator, her nursing skills invaluable. My relationship with my biological family settled into polite distance, occasional calls and holiday gatherings without pretense. One knew about the lottery. To them, I was just a non-profit director who had found success on her own. When family members faced hardship, I helped quietly and anonymously. Dad's medical bills, Ryan's rehab treatment. I was there without expectation or recognition. One evening on Martha's porch, watching the sun set in pink and gold, she said softly, "How different things would have been if you'd told them about the money from the start." He nodded. They would have been attentive, loving, but not real. I'm grateful for the truth, painful as it was. The lottery changed my life, but not in the way I expected. It gave me freedom, the freedom to see, choose wisely, and value myself beyond what I could give others. Who deserves your love isn't who's there when you have everything to offer, but who stays when you have nothing but yourself. The days following the family meeting unfolded with a curious blend of relief and lingering tension. I had spoken my truth, faced their judgments, and yet, the room for real healing still felt narrow. The atmosphere in my apartment settled into a quiet hum, the kind that comes after a storm has passed but before the sky clears entirely. Martha's quiet support became the foundation beneath my feet. She was more than family now. She was a true friend, a guardian of my newfound peace. One afternoon, we sat in her sunlit living room, surrounded by her well-worn books and the soft ticking of a vintage clock. The past weeks had been exhausting, and I confessed my fears about what lay ahead. "I'm scared, Martha," I admitted. Scared that no matter how much I try, the damage is done. That the family will never see me the way I want them to. She smiled softly, placing a gentle hand over mine. Sometimes, Cassie, the most important person to accept you is yourself. Her words echoed long after I left. I realized that much of the pain came not from their rejection, but from the weight I had carried, trying to prove myself, seeking approval, bending myself to fit their expectations. It was time to shed those old burdens. I began journaling daily, writing letters I never intended to send, exploring my feelings with brutal honesty. Each page was a step toward healing, a declaration that I mattered, on my terms. My non-profit project, once a distant dream, grew with every passing day. Inspired by Martha's resilience and the stories of other seniors living alone, I poured my energy into creating a community of support. With Charlotte by my side, we organized outreach programs, volunteer networks, and fundraising events. The work was demanding but deeply rewarding. It gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Setting boundaries with my family proved harder than I expected. Old patterns tugged at me like shadows, especially when they reached out with superficial kindness or veiled requests. One evening my mother called, her voice hesitant. "Cassie, I've been thinking. Maybe we could try to be closer. For the kids' sake." I paused, feeling the familiar pull of guilt. But this time I was ready. "Mom, I want to be honest. I care about you, but I need to protect myself. I'm open to rebuilding trust, but it has to be real and mutual." There was silence on the line, then a quiet, "I understand." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a start. Despite the fractured family ties, I found peace in helping where I could, discreetly and without expectation. When my cousin Ryan struggled with addiction, I arranged anonymous support for his rehab. When Dad faced a health scare, I covered some medical expenses through a patient assistance program. No thank yous, no acknowledgements, just kindness done quietly and on my terms. Outside of family, my world expanded in unexpected ways. Volunteers at the nonprofit became close friends. We celebrated small victories, shared stories over coffee, and built a community that felt like chosen family. Charlotte remained my rock, her laughter a constant reminder that joy could coexist with hardship. One afternoon, Martha and I sat in her garden, watching the bees hum between blooming flowers. "I'm still learning how to forgive," I confessed. "Not to forget what happened, but to free myself from anger." She nodded knowingly. "Forgiveness isn't about them, Cassie. It's about your peace." Her words settled deep, planting seeds of compassion that I nurtured every day. With my nonprofit flourishing and my boundaries clearer, I began to envision a life shaped not by past wounds but by hope. I purchased a modest home, cozy, welcoming, filled with light, just a few blocks from Martha's house. We shared dinners, laughter, and quiet evenings watching sunsets. The lottery money was no longer a secret burden but a tool for creating meaningful change. Money had tested my family, exposing fractures and pretenses. But it also taught me invaluable lessons about self-worth, generosity, and the true meaning of family. The people who stayed through hardship, who gave without keeping score, they were my real family. As I write this, I want to ask you, have you set boundaries with those who drain your energy? Have you found your own chosen family, the people who uplift and support you unconditionally? If this story resonates, please share your thoughts in the comments. Your journey matters, and your voice could inspire someone else to find their path. The road ahead isn't perfect. There are days of doubt and moments when old wounds ache. But with each step, I walk toward a life defined by honesty, kindness, and courage. And for that, I am deeply grateful. The months that followed the family meeting and my decision to build a life on my own terms felt like a gradual awakening. Each day I woke with a little more peace, a little more clarity about who I was, and who I wanted to be. I remember the first morning I woke in my new home, sunlight spilling through the windows, casting a warm glow across the walls that I had painted myself. It was modest, nothing extravagant, but it was mine. Every corner reflected my choices, my values, and the freedom I had fought so hard to claim. For the first time in a long time I felt truly free. Not from money, but from the expectations and judgments that had weighed me down for years. My relationship with my biological family never fully healed, But that was no longer a source of sorrow. Instead, I found richness in the chosen family I had created. Martha, Charlotte, my non-profit team, and others who had shown genuine care and kindness. We celebrated birthdays, holidays, and small victories together, forming bonds that were real and unconditional. The non-profit had blossomed beyond my wildest hopes. We had expanded our services, helping hundreds of elderly people live with dignity and joy. Our volunteers became friends, our beneficiaries extended family. Each story of transformation reminded me why I had chosen this path. Money was just a tool. The real wealth was in the connections and the difference we made. Forgiving those who had hurt me wasn't easy. But as time passed, I realized forgiveness wasn't about excusing their behavior. It was about freeing myself. One afternoon, I sat down to write a letter to my father, not to send, but to release the anger and sadness I still carried. I wrote about the pain, the unmet expectations, and the lessons learned. I acknowledged the complexity of our relationship and, most importantly, I told myself that I was worthy of love and respect no matter what. That letter was a turning point, a quiet act of reclaiming my power. With my newfound confidence, I allowed myself to explore relationships I had long avoided. Friendships deepened, and for the first time in years, I opened my heart to the possibility of love, not as validation but as shared growth. Charlotte teased me about my cautious optimism, and I laughed, realizing I had come a long way from the fearful woman who had kept her lottery win a secret. The money I won was still there, secure, managed wisely by trusted advisors. But it no longer defined me or my happiness. Instead, I found joy in simple pleasures. A morning walk in the garden, a good book, the laughter of friends, the quiet comfort of knowing I had created a life true to myself. Sometimes I think back to that moment when I first discovered the winning numbers, the shock, the excitement, the fear. That moment changed everything. But not because of the money. Because it forced me to look closely at the people around me and myself. I learned that the people who deserve a place in your life are not those who stick around only when you have something to offer, but those who stay when you have nothing but yourself. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Martha and I sat on her porch, sharing stories and dreams. "You did good, Cassie," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "Not just with the money, but with the woman you've become." I smiled, feeling a swell of gratitude. "Thank you, Martha, for everything." She squeezed my hand gently. "Remember, family is what you make it. And you made something beautiful. If you've stayed with me through this story, I want to ask you, who are the people in your life who truly matter? Have you found the courage to set boundaries, to forgive, and to embrace the family you choose? Your story is just as important. Share your experiences below. Together, we can find strength in truth and hope in healing. My journey taught me that wealth is not measured by numbers in a bank account, but by the richness of our relationships and the depth of our self-respect. The lottery win was a gift, yes, but the greatest gift was the freedom to be myself, to live honestly, and to love without fear. And that truly is priceless.